What's up, guys? I am so excited to have you here today for the Airbnb masterclass. We're going to dive right in, and I'm going to pour all of my knowledge into showing you how you can start your Airbnb business in 2025 with the latest information. This is exactly how I've been able to go to a multiple six-figure Airbnb superhost in just 2 years. So let's get right into it. You're going to learn by the end of this training exactly how you can go from zero to over $100,000 in your very first year with Airbnb. And you might not believe this yet, but you can do that in as little as just 1 to 2 properties. All right, just 1 to 2 of the right properties. So the next question you have is, how do we find these properties? So let's get right into it. Step number 1, and one of the most important things, is market research. Now, what do I mean by market research? There's 2 things that matter when you do market research, and there's 2 purposes for it. Number 1 is to understand regulations, and then number 2 is to find profitable properties. All right. Number 1 is first, though. So the first thing you want to do, and what I started doing, is I started with my first property within a couple hours of where I lived. And that's for a couple of reasons. Now, you don't have to do that, but I would recommend starting with a city that is very close to you and a lot of vacationers where there's an actual demand for travel in that city. That would be ideal. You can self-manage a little more easily. You can get more comfortable with the property and get your feet wet in this whole Airbnb journey before you start going across the country, which, by the way, you also can do. And my number 1 guiding principle, by the way, whether it's near you or whether it's not when you start out, make sure you're making data-driven decisions. So it's all about the profitability. It's all about what you can actually end up making. Don't get too fancy with it too early. Start with a property near you. So, regulation. What you want to understand is, do they allow Airbnb in that particular city? And there's 2 quick ways to do this. Obviously, you have number 1, which is Google. What you would search in Google is, you would just type in any city. I don't know, Washington, D.C. Do they allow Airbnbs in Washington, D.C.? Sacramento, Los Angeles. Whatever the city is, wherever you are, or whatever the smaller town or city that you're looking to invest in, make sure that they actually allow Airbnb. Just do a quick Google search, STR laws. STR is short-term rental, and make sure they allow Airbnbs there. Another quick way is also on Airbnb.com, right? You can plug in a city into Airbnb, and it will actually tell you what those regulations are and if they allow short-term rentals or not. So this is the most important thing you want to do before you actually invest in a property. Whether you're doing Airbnb rental arbitrage, which is when you go out and you rent a property from a landlord, and then they give you permission to sublet it, and then you post it on Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, sites like that. And then you keep the difference in the profit after you've paid your rent and utilities and all of those expenses. Then there's actually purchasing a property, and that does come with additional benefits if you're able to pick the right property. So no matter what you're doing, whether you're buying, whether you're arbitraging, which I'll get into right now, you want to make sure that you pick a city and a location first, and that they allow Airbnb short-term rentals before you go in and you start investing your time and money into that place. So, what I want to talk about really quick here as well, and what I teach all of my students, we focus on single family homes. Now, I understand there's some folks that teach apartments, doing short-term rental for apartments. In my experience and how I even got into Airbnb, my realtor at the time showed me that he was making, with one property, one single family house, over $20,000 a month. Now, when I was starting out just like you were, I didn't even know that was possible with one single house. And it wasn't some mansion. It was just a single family home in the right location in California. And it was generating 20K a month. And he pulled out his app and he showed that to me. And that's exactly what I was able to duplicate in one property. Now, why do I teach my students single family home investing for short-term rentals versus apartments? Apartments can be good. However, how many apartments do you need to put on Airbnb to generate $20,000 a month, which is just what one house can do if you pick the right single family home? You probably need 4, 5, 6 apartments to do that. That means you have to furnish 4, 5, or 6 properties instead of one. You have to go and list all of these properties. Everything is multiplied by 5. We want to take the shortcut. There are shortcuts to success, guys. So I always focus on, that's my little window, single family homes. And that way we can get to our 6-figure, multiple 6-figure, 7-figure revenue or income much faster with much less work. The work comes in the research. So once we've got the regulations figured out, the next thing you want to do is find profitable properties. Now, how do you do that? We're going to use, what I use with my students is AirDNA. Oh, can't spell today. AirDNA.co. Okay? AirDNA, excuse me, is a website where you can go in and you can type in a city or even an actual home address, and it will give you all sorts of data about that property. And what we're trying to do, in a nutshell, is figure out, is the property or the city profitable? Now, what are the key metrics that point that out? AirDNA gives you several data points. The ones that we care about are number one. Let me put this up here again for you. AirDNA.co. The main metrics that I always tell my students to focus on is number one, average daily rate or nightly rate, which is what is the average in that particular city nightly price. I always tell my students to focus on only something with $150 to $200 daily rates or more. All right. And yes, we look at properties $300, $400 as well, and even higher. But this is the bare minimum. Otherwise, it's just way too low. The margins are tight, and we want to scale and we want to pick larger properties that can generate, not larger properties, but properties that can generate more income, bigger bang for the buck, bigger bang for the investment. The second metric you want to pay attention to is occupancy. All right, which is how occupied the properties are in the area. And what I like to do with my students is anything at 70% or greater, because we don't want to go in and invest in an area where the occupancy is lower. It's going to mean that it's harder for you to get bookings. All right, so these are the two key points that you want to focus on when you're looking and doing your your research. Another thing that I have, by the way, and if you're interested, it's called my profitability calculator. If you're interested in that, I can get that to you. But once we've taken and plugged in all of our addresses that we've been researching for different single family homes, we want to plug those in first into AirDNA, get this data, and then I use a profitability calculator, which is a proprietary spreadsheet that I've developed. And it basically gives you projections on, at the end of the day, after all the expenses, after you pay your mortgage or your rent, if you're doing arbitrage, what is left for you in your pocket? What are your projections? What's your cash on cash return? What is what you're going to make on a monthly basis? And what are you going to keep in your pocket? That's very important, because we only want to invest in properties that are going to be profitable. Okay? That's the key. And if you do really good research here, you focus on any property with higher average daily, nightly rates and good occupancy, when you follow the rest of the steps that I'm going to share with you, you're going to be so booked, way more booked than your competitors. All right. And you're going to be able to charge more money per night for the exact same properties. And that's what we're going to learn in the rest of this process. So number one, market research. Make sure you do your market research. Very, very important. Number two. Now, when it comes to finding your properties, what I want to explain to you is two different business models. Number one is, as I'm sure you're aware, owning a property and renting it out on Airbnb. Okay, so this is if you've got some capital and you're able to invest in a property and just go buy the right property. This also will allow you to build equity, and it's a great tool to building wealth. There's massive tax deductions, which puts a lot more money back in your pocket as well while you're generating cash flow. So owning the property and renting it out is great for cash flow, equity gain, right? And oh my God, I can't type. Spell. Gain. And number three, tax deductions. Guys, these are very, very important. I started mainly for the cash flow, and I also wanted equity gain. Tax deductions came after, and I realized, wow, you can save and actually keep a ton, tens of thousands, if not even hundreds of thousands of dollars back in your pocket once you've owned a few properties, or a couple properties, or even one property. So that's for ownership. The second thing that you can do is what many do to start out. Many of my students, if not most of them, start with rental or Airbnb arbitrage. All right. So what is Airbnb arbitrage? So if you're starting out with a little bit less capital, you don't have enough to go and buy a property, that's totally fine because you can generate insane cash flow also by doing arbitrage. Now, what is arbitrage? That is when you go on sites like Zillow, Realtor.com, many other websites out there, and you search for properties that are listed for rent. So after you've already done step one and you found what is profitable as far as cities and areas, now you can focus on finding the actual particular property, and you go and rent a property from a landlord. You convince them to allow you to sublet it, and then you can go and list it on Airbnb. So much, much smaller upfront capital, much less risk for you as an investor, and you're able to also build up cash flow. So again, it's all the same exact process that we talked about as far as researching. The only difference here is, do you own the property or are you doing Airbnb arbitrage? Now, when you do Airbnb arbitrage, the pitch is simple. Now, I give my students all the actual scripts on how they can pitch the landlord with the templates and everything, but to give you a high level, basically what it is you call the landlord. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord. My name is so-and-so. My company does corporate housing, and your property checked off all the boxes that we're looking for. We're expanding in your area. We don't have enough time to go into the actual detailed scripts necessarily, but I want to give you the key points. What allows you to convince the landlord to do so? Well, what you're going to convey to them is, as a landlord, what's the most important thing? You don't want your property to get damaged, and you want to make sure that there aren't going to be crazy parties, which is what sometimes, in some cases, Airbnb may have had a rep for. So you want to, convey confidence, convey professionalism, that's probably the most important, and also be able to handle the objections that they typically have. All right. And again, I've got scripts for exactly all of that, and it's exactly what my students use and how I've been able to secure rental arbitrage units in the past. So this is a great way to build up cash flow, to also eventually end up buying and owning properties. That's typically what you want to aim towards. But there are people that have built massive portfolios just with the arbitrage. It depends on what your goal is, and it depends on what resources you have. So if you're starting out with lower capital, rental arbitrage is an amazing way to start an Airbnb, and eventually you can start owning property with all of the capital that you're gaining by doing Airbnb rental arbitrage. Here's a third bonus opportunity, by the way, for Airbnb. If you've got $0 to start, all right? Yes, I mean you have no money to start. You can still enter Airbnb. And that is, we won't spend too much time on this, but it is an amazing opportunity as well. Number 3 is co-hosting. Okay? Co-hosting is when you don't own the property. And again, you use Zillow or Realtor.com or any of these websites where you can find properties. And all you have to do is pitch the landlord that you can help them. Basically, you manage their property for them on Airbnb and you take a cut, whether that's between 15 and 30%. And all you're doing is managing the cleaning, the communication with the guest, and coordinating that whole effort and listing it on the Airbnb platform or VRBO platform for them, and you collect your profit. So for example, if you pick the right properties, once again, let's say the property generates 10K a month. Right? Let's say you charge a flat fee of 20%. What's 20% of 10,000? That is $2,000 a month. All you're doing is helping manage the property, taking care of guests, handling the cleanings, all those communications, and coordinating with the cleaners. And that is just from one property. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yes, imagine you can scale this out to several properties. You don't own them. You don't carry the risk of ownership. You don't have any of that liability. And there's a right way to do this as well. But in a nutshell, this is the business process. And then you can earn your $2,000 a month. All right. We're not going to focus on that in this training. This is mainly going to be for owning or rental arbitrage. And that's what I wanted to get over to you. Whether it's for owning or rental arbitrage, what are some great amenities that you want to find in a property? A really great one, always, from what I've seen, is a hot tub. Guests love hot tubs. Also on AirDNA, by the way, it can point out, you want to find these patterns in the properties that are doing best while you're looking on AirDNA, because you can click throughout the neighborhoods. You can find what properties are performing the best, and what you want to do is really pick properties like that or design your property like that. Look at what amenities they have. Do they have a hot tub? Do they have a pool? I know another big one is having some sort of, golf, game room. Game rooms are big. Okay? You basically want to make sure that your guests can have the greatest time. Now, again, you don't need all of these. You don't need all of them. But if you can have some really cool amenities at your property, the more amenities you have, the better you stand out from your competition, the more you can demand per night. Okay? And that's how I'm able to charge top dollar in my niches. And this is exactly what I tell my students to pay attention to. And that's why they're totally dominating the market in their areas, because they go for all of the amenities. They make the best properties. They build the best properties or acquire the best properties, whether it's arbitrage or owning, and they're able to charge top dollar when they've got these amenities. So do research. Research is really big, and make sure that you're duplicating, if not making better, the properties in that area. And you'll get an idea of how much you can charge compared to them. It's literally that simple. Step number 3, once you're getting your property, acquiring or renting your property. So if you're purchasing the property, pretty straightforward process. I am also going to have a training on creative finance strategies where you can get the best deals when you're negotiating properties and how to negotiate. That's all sales and negotiation. That can actually get you hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars saved and in your pocket if you're able to negotiate the right deal when you're purchasing. I've done that, and timing is everything. Knowing how to look for those properties, making sure you get a realtor that is familiar with short-term rentals. They can really tell you and save you a lot of time on what areas are best for Airbnb or short-term rentals, and they can just start sending you those type of properties. So that'll help you tremendously with your research, especially if you want a really good realtor. If they're familiar with short-term rentals, that's going to save you a ton of time. And then your negotiating skills also come into play. But let's also take a look at rental arbitrage for a moment. I actually want to focus on rental arbitrage for just a moment. So once you give your pitch and they agree, the landlord agrees. And guys, be prepared for no's when you're calling around. My students get about 1 yes every 8 no's, which is a very good turnout. And guys, when you go and you're calling these landlords, and yes, there's a little bit of work that goes into doing rental arbitrage. Of course, money doesn't just rain from the sky, guys. There is a little bit of work. This is very simple, but it takes you dedicating time and also putting in the work to reap the rewards. So when you're looking at rental arbitrage and you're calling the landlords and giving them your pitch, you want to make sure that once they say yes, you go through your contract and that there's a sublease addendum in there, which basically legally permits you to sublease the property. So you want to make sure you review the contract, make sure that there's specifically a place in the contract that agrees and allows you to also sublet the property. Once you do that, you also need, so let's say number one, an addendum for subleasing. And then number two, you're going to want to get insurance. You're going to want to get insurance on the property just to cover any damages. Now, Airbnb has their own insurance, but I like to also get an insurance policy just in case. So quick recap, you've done your market research. Let's just go over it one more time. Market research was done. You've identified your property. Whether you're doing own versus or arbitrage. You've secured the property. Now it's time to furnish the property and design. Okay? Please don't mind my chicken scratch here. What you want to do when you've done your research, and again, these steps are very intertwined. You've already found the best properties with the best amenities. You've secured them. And if you buy, by the way, sometimes it's great. I've purchased already furnished properties. If you can get a great deal, that'll save you some time. If it's nice furniture, get the property furnished. All right. Now, you don't need to do that. But if you haven't, either when you're starting out, you don't need a professional designer. All you have to do, again, is go on AirDNA, find the properties that looked really great, that were performing the best, and duplicate and make better the design. Okay? And everything can come online. You can order your furniture if the property doesn't come furnished, even though that is a hack. If it's good furniture and you're able to really negotiate a great deal, whether it's arbitrage, whether it's purchasing, that could be a shortcut so that you really just have to focus on enhancing the furniture and the design. But again, let's say you're starting from scratch. I ordered all of my stuff just online from Amazon. And here's the key. You don't need the most expensive furniture. You just need furniture that looks really nice. If it looks really nice, and if you have an eye for design, which you don't need, I definitely didn't. My girlfriend helped me design my properties. You can either hire a designer or, quick hack, go to Pinterest. Pinterest and actually Airbnb and duplicate and make better. Get design ideas. Everything is available for you online to purchase. You can get great deals on everything on Amazon, all these different places. Costco, great places where you can not have to spend too much money to start and really get a great bang for your buck when you're designing these properties. The other thing you need to know is, especially for arbitrage, by the way, you don't need much money to start. In fact, you can use other people's money. You're going to go and get a business credit card. You're going to start your LLC and you're going to open a business line of credit and business credit cards under that LLC, and then you can invest in that furniture, and with the profits that are coming in, pay off your card. All right? So you can start, there's no excuse. If you're low on capital, you can start by getting an LLC. Let's just talk about it right now. Open an LLC. There's companies like LegalZoom that I've used. You can actually do it yourself, but you pay them a couple $100 and they open an LLC for you. All right? And then you're going to establish business credit. Okay? So you don't even need to use your own money to start this business, right? You're going to go use the bank, borrow that money, and if you've done steps 1 and 2 correctly and you follow this process, you're going to have profits coming in where you can pay off the initial investment of the furniture that you've had to buy. All right? Okay. Once you've gotten your furniture, the next step is hiring your team. Who is the main person in your team? The main person or persons in the team is the most important, and that is your cleaners. Okay? And your cleaners, you want to have a great relationship with because they're actually your property managers. Okay? They're kind of boots on the ground for your whole operation. Your cleaners, you can go to a website or an app called Thumbtack. It's a great place. I've found several cleaners, and you might have to go through a couple because you want to really get great people that are really familiar with Airbnb. When you're selecting someone on Thumbtack, by the way, you want to make sure that they've done Airbnb cleaning, okay? You want to make sure that they're familiar with that. They've already done Airbnb cleanings because that way they're going to be very comfortable and you're going to be very comfortable with them understanding how the business works, what they need to look out for, paying attention to detail, all right? That's very, very crucial. And the other thing that you want to do is also have, depending on your property, if you've got a lawn, you need a landscaper. If you have a pool, you need a pool person, right? They're going to service your pool. And you can get all of these for pretty cheap. Again, use Thumbtack. You can find all of these on Thumbtack. The fourth that you might want, and again, you do not need this to start out, but it's a virtual assistant. This is mostly for when you're scaling. I started and I managed my first property completely by myself. You don't need a virtual assistant. I spent about, I don't know, I want to say maybe an hour a week managing guest communications. It's very, very limited work once you've got the right cleaner, right pool person, and right landscaper, right? So all my properties have pools and hot tubs and land that they need to get trimmed up and kept really sharp. Very important for the presentation of the property. When you're in hospitality, it's very important how you represent everything in your property, your listing, so on and so forth. And that is why your cleaner is the most important, because in hospitality, you want to make sure that once your guests step into your property, you're providing an experience. Everything is extremely clean, very well kept, and it gives you an air as a guest of, wow, I feel like I'm at home. So definitely make sure you pay attention to hiring the right staff. I also want to mention that while you've hired all of these folks, at the same time, what you want to do is also go to Thumbtack and hire some helpers that can help you build and assemble all the furniture that you've got, that you've purchased. All right, that's going to save you a tremendous amount of time. You don't want to be the person going in there, building everything, moving everything. You can absolutely help. I've definitely done it, but as I started moving on to the next property, I just would hire that help. And while I helped them, most of the work was done by them, the assembly, because that can be quite a bit of work, but that is going to help you with getting everything put together. What you do want to do is make sure that you keep an eye on staging and where the furniture is going to go. And again, I've always had some help doing that with my girlfriend. So if you have a significant other, a husband or a wife, that can be very helpful to you. You guys work as a team and put all of that together, especially if they've got an eye for design, because I most certainly did not. But if you don't, you can also hire a designer, but you don't need to do that to start. You really just need to duplicate and make a little bit better what you've seen on Airbnb and AirDNA really work. All right. So the next step, once you've hired your team, and this can pretty much happen at the same time. Once you've hired the team and after you've already put your furniture together and staged it, you want a photographer. All right. That's number 5. Your photography. Now, do not cut corners on your photography. This is the single most important, if it all came down to it, aspect of your Airbnb listing. This is what sells your property and makes everyone skip everyone else's and click on your listing. It's because your photos look the best, the highest quality. They were shot with a professional real estate photographer, and that's only going to cost you a few $100. Please, please, please do not cut corners on the photography. All right. And this is one of the things that I always harp on with my students, and why they are so successful is because they follow all these steps step by step to the T, and they all get amazing photos done. That's so important. The 2 types of photos, and again, you can, by the way, Thumbtack is a great place to hire great photographers. Okay, and ask them for samples of their work. Don't just go and hire anybody. Have them send you a portfolio of what they've done in the past, and that way you can vet it and make sure, again, that they've done Airbnb photos, short-term rental photos, and that they have great quality portfolios. And also compare that against what you've seen in your market or Airbnb. We want to shoot for the best quality, especially on the photos. Do not cut corners on this. All right, I think I beat that. I beat that to death. All right. And with the photos, by the way, couple things on the photos. What you want to make sure is that they capture, and they'll know this if they've done, Airbnb photography or real estate photography. You want twilight and daytime photos. This combination, the twilight photos are when the sun is starting to set, gives an amazing quality picture, especially if you have nice views around your property. And then you need daytime photos. And again, for inside and out. The twilight photos are perfect for outdoors especially, and also the daytime photos you need for inside and outside just to capture everything in the property. Twilight photos can really, really sell your property on Airbnb, especially if you have a nice view. They're perfect for selling that. Okay, so I think we beat the photography to death. Make sure you get great photos done. Next step, we're really getting close to the end for you to start getting your first bookings. Number 6 is creating your listing. So the best part about this is you really just have to go to Airbnb.com or VRBO and it prompts you exactly step by step on how to do that. But when it comes to the descriptions, I want you to go to ChatGPT. Use ChatGPT AI to have it describe your property, for the property descriptions, the full depth descriptions. All of that can just go straight into ChatGPT. Put in a prompt, something like, write me a description for my short-term rental that has a pool, hot tub spa in this particular city, and lists out all of the tourist attractions, restaurants, activities, and things to do that are unique to that city that a visitor would want to do. Something along those lines. And it's going to punch out a bunch of bullets and a bunch of different descriptions for you to just literally copy paste and use. Make sure you review them. AI is not perfect, but it's really, really good and a great tool and resource for you to use. It's free. Go to ChatGPT to do that. And at that point, you've got all of your property photos. Make sure you go through all of the amenities and tag on as many amenities as you can. A couple that are very important that I see many people miss is the sleeping arrangements in every room. Make sure. Recently, Airbnb has kind of modified their interface. So make sure that for every bedroom, you list out the number of beds, how big the bed is. People love king beds. So make sure you can get as many king beds for comfortable sleep as you can. Another pro tip, by the way, while I'm on it, is make sure you spend on the bed quality and the pillows. People love having great sleep. There's nothing worse than going on a vacation and you don't sleep well because the beds are uncomfortable or they're too stiff or they're too soft. Make sure you get good bedding and make sure you get good comfortable mattresses and comfortable pillows. Those are very key. So sleeping arrangements, make sure you're including the number of beds in every single room and the size of the beds and also the amenities in each room. Okay? That's going to make sure that you stand out from all the competition and that you have as many amenities as you possibly can. Put them in the listing, make sure you don't miss any, and your listing is going to rank better on the algorithm and show up higher the more that you have. Okay? The next thing you want to do once you've created your listing is very important, and that is your software for automation. All right? We, ladies and gentlemen, got into Airbnb to build a passive or semi-passive, really is what it is, income, where you don't want to be hands-on the whole time. You want your business to eventually run without you, and you can't do that without having software that helps you automate multiple aspects of the business. The first one I will say is pricing software. What pricing software is going to do is help you automate the pricing of your nightly rates on your calendar. And it's going to be based on the demand in your particular market. So these pricing softwares already know what everyone else in your neighborhood is charging. They already know what events are coming up, and they allow you to competitively price so that you're not the one having to come up with the pricing out of thin air or do your research. That's what you pay them to do. So there's a very tiny fee that they charge, but you definitely need pricing software. There's a couple very good options on that. You can use something like Price Labs, or Beyond Pricing is great. All right, these are great options. I'll leave a link for you somewhere so that you can go get either one of these pricing softwares when you start your listing. And there's actually a strategy that I teach my students on exactly how to set the thresholds for the pricing so that you can charge the top dollar even amongst everyone using the pricing software. Okay? Another software, which is really more important once you've actually gotten more than one property, and that's going to help you manage all of the communications and all of the listings in one central location. So everything on Airbnb, on VRBO, on booking.com, which you should be on all those platforms, by the way, to maximize your bookings and occupancy. And that is Hospitable. Okay? Hospitable is an excellent tool. It helps you manage all of these aspects of guest communications. Your VA can also log in and help you communicate with all the guests and manage all of that turnover of guests through Hospitable from all of the different listings. It also shows you all of your revenue, your income. All those data points are through Hospitable as well. So make sure you get this. Those are the two main ones, and I already mentioned number one was the pricing software, but just so I can list them out for you, here is pricing software. These are the keys. These are the keys. So you've got your whole listing done. Everything has been followed step by step as I've shown you on the training. Now is the fun part. And if you followed all of these steps one by one, just like the rest of my students and just like myself when I started, I got a booking in the first 24 hours that I listed my property. Right out the gate, first booking within 24 to 48 hours. Okay? I remember when I got my first property, I did $12K in my first 2 weeks of having the property. I got it in the middle of the month and it already generated me $12K. My mortgage at the time was about $5K, and let's call another $1,500 in expenses. That's on the higher side, by the way. It's actually probably a little bit less. But what does that leave? So 65, that was $5,500 in 2 weeks. That changed everything for me. That was the best feeling when it came to business that I've ever had. I had tried Amazon FBA, I had tried so many different things, and I just sat there. Property was ready, looked at this, and I was like, that's all I had to do. And now this will just keep happening. Guys, I hope each and every one of you, just like the rest of my students, can experience what that first payout and booking feels like, okay? It totally changes everything. Everything else becomes about scaling, okay? Congratulations for making it through the free Airbnb masterclass training. With that information, you're able to go out and execute and build massive success for yourself if you put the work in, if you take action and follow all the steps that I'd laid out in that training. And for those of you that are very serious and want to start immediately on your Airbnb journey, click the link below. Be great, and I can't wait to work with you.